doing today? Awesome. Well, I am super excited to be moderating this discussion today. My name's John Lynn. I'm the Chief Business Officer at Equinix. And today we're going to talk about the great convergence, where networks, data centers, and AI meet, and who's actually going to win around this. So expect some truth-saying, maybe some punchy conversation and dialogue, as we've got a lot of different sectors covered here. So we were going to center around like two questions, and I'll make some introductions along the way. But the first one is around really customer demand and risk for the business, and how do each of us as different cohorts amongst the organization end up managing that. I will start with Scott Charter, an AI emerging tech strategist over at Oracle with an incredible 30 years in the overall IT industry, including several IT startups that were acquired. So you've seen some of these cycles before. So maybe if you want to go ahead and lead in.
Thanks, John. I would start by saying that if you can have eggs in different baskets as much as you can to diminish some of that risk, 420,000 customers allows us to not have to focus on a few, but there's a lot of the news right now on some very big deals that people are concerned on, and all I'm going to say is more baskets, please. That's how you de-risk that.
That's a great point. And I mean, you guys are closest to the end user of the AI, so to speak. So maybe where are you seeing from a vertical or segment perspective, like who's most exciting and where are you seeing the fastest growth?
So everyone in the news is looking at what's going on with the frontier model operators that are driving this massive growth. But I don't overlook the fact that, the enterprise 5,000 also continue to embrace AI in a different way. So there's different spends in different buckets.
All right, thanks. Next up, Jeff Hulse, President of Verizon Partner Solutions, serving the global wholesale industry on connectivity and solutions. Again, over 28 years in the industry, including making capacity power 124. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
Maybe talk about the network world, how that's changing. Again, similar questions around customer opportunity, excitement, and risk management around that.
Yeah, the death of wireline was grossly exaggerated about 5 years ago. I think we've all been looking for different growth models out there. A lot of the network operators were looking at, do you want to put your eggs in the basket of wireless or wireline? And it looks like wireline's sexy again. So we're really happy within Verizon. But we really start this conversation right now with where do you have the network? And our conversation is really around return on investment. We can't be everything to everybody, but we think the growth is going to be there with all the network operators. And back to the single demand point, I think it starts with a lot of the hyperscalers, the neo cloud providers. But as you start building out that core network and you connect all the cloud players in the data centers, it's going to be incredibly important to really expand your network and really have reach to the edge where you can have a diversified, distributed network. And we think Verizon is very well positioned to ultimately take advantage of that. Now, we see folks from the hyperscalers originating the demand, but then network operators have to really interconnect with each other. So we're at the center of that orchestration right now and really happy with everything we're saying.
Yeah, no, to hear that. And data is everywhere and getting more and more complicated. So I think that capillarity is so important there. And now on to the data center landscape. Rob Martinek, a great friend and CEO of Databank, been in the industry over 25 years. CEO of NetAccess, acquired by Cologix, CEO of Voxel, acquired by Internet, and the CEO of InfoHighway, acquired by Broadview, again, a veteran of the landscape. So maybe, again, same question for you around customer demand and risk management, especially around, given the capital numbers today, right, on the data center landscape. How does Databank think about that?
Yeah, no, great. Thanks for having me. So Databank, we're a US data center developer with 65 assets in 25 markets, 2,500 customers. So we feel like we have a pretty good perspective on the sector. Obviously, from a demand perspective, I think about the business in three buckets. One is the hyperscale piece. It's about 40% of our revenue, and that encompasses, larger core deployments, and it could be a 200 kW network node. So that piece, obviously, there's great growth there. Public cloud continues to grow, and obviously now the AI stuff. Then our largest segment is core, large enterprise and kind of wholesale, and that's like the Fortune 5,000. I mean, what we're seeing there is those requirements are getting bigger. We did the largest number of multi-megawatt enterprise deals in company history in 2025. We have conversations with enterprise customers in financial services and healthcare. They're looking at 10 megawatts, 15 megawatts, 20 megawatts. So definitely feel like the requirements are getting bigger. And then the third segment where, it's an emerging segment is kind of the neo clouds as they're called, right? So, to me, it's like we've seen this film before. It was called Public Cloud in 2008, right? I mean, at that time I was with Voxel, as you just pointed out, one of many people that were automating infrastructure. Obviously what happened there, a lot of consolidation, there's still people around today. So we think that will probably follow a similar trend. And, obviously there's already some folks that are out in front and there's others that are kind of lagging. So I think there you just need to be prudent and just decide, how much risk you want to take with that. Obviously, there's a lot of growth there because these people are, voracious from a capacity perspective. But ultimately, probably like your business, John, we think a diversified portfolio of customers is probably the best way to go long term, and try not to Scott's point, put too many eggs in a single basket.
Yeah, and I guess for Databank, as you think about the risk profile of going either spec or the de-risked fully around pre-leasing, like where are you on the spectrum there?
Yeah, I think as in today's world, given the size of these developments, you have to take a multi-year approach. And that means you have to put a stake in the ground in terms of how much capacity do I want to bring to market over what period of time. And that's like putting, a 200 boxcar train on the rails, and it's really hard to stop once you do that. So we are building actively about 1 gigawatt of data center capacity across our footprint that will come to market between 2026 and 2030. It ranges 241 megawatts this year, of which 170 is pre-leased. So we are kind of leaning into demand and saying, look, we're going to build on spec, meaning I don't have a customer yet, but we don't really think of that as spec because obviously we have a pipeline, we have existing customers, we understand the market, so we feel that's a prudent amount of capacity to bring to market. So there's no, it's more, I think, a little bit of art rather than science, but if we want to grow the business, as you know, you got to bring on inventory.
Amen. And next over to you, Andrej. Andrej Danis, partner and managing director of America's digital infrastructure and the lead for that at AlixPartners, focused on value creation and digital infra with a special focus on fibers, towers, and data centers. Obviously, you're advising folks all across the capital spectrum and maybe end users as well. Maybe wrap all of this conversation together and how you're thinking about and seeing those conversations around customers and risk and ROI.
Actually, that's a good point, and I liked, as Jeff mentioned, the word ROI. Because one thing we don't see is spending money isn't making money. Like, it's not that I spend a lot of CapEx and that means that I will have a high ROI. I just spend the money and I just put it there. So the question will become really about the maturity of how you are spending money, because we see a lot of mature operators at this stage, but we see a lot of operators which are exploring, as you said, it's an bay of art and science, but there is a lot of science and a lot of background which you put into it and understanding it. We saw it in the fiber side before. How many people thought you can go wrong if you have a fiber player in your portfolio? A few years back, some of them would like to potentially sell it.
Yeah.
With a data center, it is also getting more complex because the designs are changing. We see the topics like who is making money today. If I have a powered LAN, I'm making a lot of money. Potentially, if I am selling today's ARMs like NVIDIA and co, I think I'm good. Yeah. But am I selling software? Am I already seeing the money coming back? Not really. So I think there will be a lot of changes and topics that will come up. I think sooner than 2028, as some people assume that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I think one thing that's heartening this time around, and I guess all of us have been through a couple of cycles here, just the sophistication of understanding kind of risk is different than it was last time around. And at the same time, though, like the quantum is so much bigger than it was, right? And so I think the necessity to understand that risk, because this is no longer hey, we're going to have a blip and we'll just get right past it. Like the quantums of capital involved are like economy shaping, right? So, and I think that's an exciting time, which goes right to my next question. Obviously, a ton of discussion about bubbles and yada yada around that. And again, we've all been through cycles. Scott, I love your perspective. Like, what feels different? What feels the same this time around? What are you keeping your eye on to make sure you're understanding how that might emerge?
I remind people we're not selling glass in the ground or something. We're selling the ability for more intelligence. And this is something that's very unique. I mean, the more intelligence we have, the ability for us to do so much more with it. Are we going to talk about solving cancer? Or are we talking about new physics, new material science, all of which comes with what we're building for? I do not see this slowing down. It will continue right up to that next DeepSeek moment when someone throws a wrench in it and says, we might be able to do it for 30% less overhead. Don't know, but until that, we believe what we're still in on.
Okay. Jeff, how about you?
This feels different because it's not built on spec, putting tons of fiber in the ground. Hopefully people will be buying more bandwidth in the future, and we were just oversaturated in the late 90s in that way. But when you have folks who pay their bills and they're asking for very specific capacity, it's really compelling, and it's going to fuel the growth story on the network side for the time to come. The thing that gets us excited is how ultimately you push that out to the prem, because we believe that you're going to need deep, dense fiber networks at the prem for enterprise, for public sector, for any one of the SLED opportunities that's out there. But we are very heartened by what we see on the demand side. Also, being able to connect with private wireless networks and then pull all that bandwidth all the way back through inferencing, we're incredibly bullish on what the future is going to hold, and we think we're incredibly well positioned for that space. So we do not think it's a bubble. Maybe there's some financing some of my more prepared colleagues could talk about, but it seems a little circular in nature where kind of the same companies are all investing in the space, but from a network operator perspective, we're very happy with where we are.
Yeah, and I think, again, that sophistication around not being spec on so much of like the long haul routes, et cetera, again, that big difference than the last time around where, again, the end customer signing up for that, they're looking at this really as an infra spend now, not just a pure service pass through, which, again, huge difference in the market there, and again, we see the same. Raul, how about you, bud?
So, as Mark Twain famously said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. I do think there's some rhyming going on here. Number one, I am a true believer in this technology. To Scott's point, it is going to be transformative. I also remember feeling the same way about the internet in 1996, right? So I think this is a long-term trend. I think that's the way we should be thinking about it, and that's the way we should be investing in it. I think where there's concern is, a lot of the growth is being driven by a new group of companies that have business models that haven't been proven out in the long term, right? Frontier model companies, the neo clouds, people like that, right? So again, that's all part of the, kind of evolution of capitalism where, there's some creative destruction going on. So I think ultimately, this infrastructure is going to be useful, but not everyone can be a winner. So there's never been a tech cycle that I'm aware of where everyone was a winner, right? So I think that's probably the best indicator that there's going to be some trouble along the way. There's going to be some potholes that the sector is going to hit, but it's good that there's discipline. It's good that there's collective memory of that, at least from the older folks, not the younger ones. I always like asking the young people, how old were you in 1999? And they're like, 8?
Yeah.
Got it. So you don't understand the dot-com era, no problem.
Right.
But I think the investor base, I remember in the bubble era, we used to get valued on a multiple of property, plant, and equipment, right? Which was just, if you think about it, just completely insane, because that meant the more you spent,
multiple on cost,
the more your value went up,
right?
right? So now we have much more rationality around that. The lending community, if you think about the data center sector, the fiber sector, the tower sector, it's all now institutionalized capital. It's all ABS securitized, meaning insurance companies, meaning that there's just a lot more focus around the pathway to profitability. And I'm hopeful that we don't, again, go into too deep of a ditch. But like I said, I do think there's going to be some potholes and some flat tires along the way, but it's all part of the process.
Yeah. One of the things that's encouraging, I think, and again, different what it felt like last time around is, our industry as a whole, especially on the data center side, there's like natural rate limiters because we're fundamentally like supply chain constrained, utility constrained, et cetera.
Power constraints are a good thing.
I mean, all of those things end up helping. Like the time is almost being built in to make sure the revenue can catch up, and we can all make rational decisions like if we're not seeing that show up in time, right? So really interesting compared to last time where I think there was so much spend from so many different sectors, so much simultaneously. I think there's more concentration, it feels like, this time around.
Yep.
But Andrej, I'd love to hear, again, you're talking to lots of folks. What are you advising?
I would say this way. the starting point and end point of this growth, I think, are set because we will really see an exponential success with the AI like we see today. But the route there, will it look like this? Will it look like this? Or will there be some shakeup on the way? I think that's more likely what will happen. We will see new technologies that we thought never will pick up. Let's take IoT, if we take communication. IoT should have come with 4G, 5G every single time and never really, but now when we have edge use cases, when we really start to use all of the inference type of workloads, I think that any of these topics, the omni-connectivity will be a huge amplitude that will enable us to work. On the other side, when we look really in the construction, sometimes the technology we are talking about, how fast it is evolving. One topic, when someone is designing even a data center today, by the time it gets built out, it may be the most modern museum ever, because it was spec'd out for Blackwell. By the time maybe it is finished, it may not even suit Vera, and it will be Ruben Plus and warm water cooled or whatever, but maybe you will have to be completely retrofitted again. So those are the elements which I feel are changing, and just understanding all of the points in the supply chain, understanding how to orchestrate, I would say, the modifications, construction, labor, supply chain. That's what is different. I think even if you, Raul, you have been like in the data center space for long, although we learned that we all worked also in the telecoms before together. So this is not a data center that you built 20 years ago. This is a data center when you build an AI data center. That's something, a very different animal that you are speccing out and building today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe Scott, I'll toss it over to you. We talked a little bit about that power efficiency maybe being a trend into the future there, and everyone talks about capacity gap, access to power, like we're talking about. But what are you seeing as like trends for your own infrastructure, and like how much of it is really driven by AI versus other cloud use cases in Oracle's case, and like where are you still seeing growth in traditional workloads, non-accelerated workloads?
So first off, it doesn't really matter the workload. There's AI attached to all workloads now, whether you're an enterprise workload or if we're looking in what we're doing either for a neo cloud or for a tier model. So that's everywhere. However, I'm still saying when people say, where do you see this in 10 years? I laugh. I'm like, I have no idea past 5. Things are just moving so fast. If we can all just step back for a second and say, where were you in November of 2021 or 2022 when things exploded and where we are today? And imagine, let's say that's a 3-year gap. Imagine the next 3 years. I can't go to 5 or 10.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Just think last year, like we had like DeepSeek moment. We had Microsoft canceling some data centers, and we had Ruben. We had all of those pieces.
Yeah.
And that's just not a year ago.
Well, and even the NVIDIA announcement about the partnership/licensing with Grok, and just seeing, hey, inference workloads fundamentally are different math, different like power utilization than training and general purpose kind of AI and GPU technology. I think that's going to be something super interesting, because I think everyone's starting to talk about inference. Everyone's pivoting to, yeah, no, we're definitely doing inference here and there. I think the reality is that's still pretty early stages around that. But I think, again, everybody would recognize that's the economic value creator for the enterprise and for the end user around that. And the more that develops, I think, Jeff, your point around like, hey, where is that going to live? It'll live in more places than like, in one location for a gigawatt center, et cetera. But how are you seeing maybe the network evolve to be able to support all of that?
Yeah, so we're really lucky. We started executing upon a strategy where we wanted to own as much of the macro cell site environment as possible so we can control our customer experience. So when we did that, we embarked on a construction project to fiber the top 69 cities in the US with dense fiber. The one fiber project. Yeah. So if you go back to the .com, you could put 12 fibers down a street, do the long haul, and that's what we were doing. But now, back when we did one fiber, we were putting 864 cables down Main Street. We were putting 1,600 fiber cables down the most important routes, with the use case being meaning we're going to put all of our fiber, all of our macro cells on those. We're now at 51% of all the Verizon wireless cell sites are on net. We manage them with our own power, with our own folks and our own NOC. So we think that's a competitive advantage. Now we're going back to say, how do we now take those fibers, splice them, go into enterprises, go into small, medium business or the public sector, and how do we give them private line services, high speed, Ethernet, or wave services? So I think we're well positioned because all that dense fiber is distributed for what we're going to need for inferencing. So we think we're ahead of this curve there. Others are going back to revisit that, but we have a cost advantage, we believe. So we think we're very well positioned for that right now.
That's awesome. And then maybe another side of the entire story around our development capability, especially on the data center side, public sentiment around that, right? Obviously, that's gotten very, very noisy over the course of the last 4 or 5 months. You guys have been in business for a long time and obviously been great partners with local communities, as have we. Maybe talk about how do you work with communities to get them to understand the benefit and value of that to ease the path?
Yeah, that's definitely becoming a big issue. More broadly speaking, I mean, on the data center side, everything's getting more expensive, right? The community opposition's getting more fierce, which means you need to spend more energy there. The utilities are now realizing that they need to protect themselves, so they're putting significantly more financial commitments on new large load requests. And then with AI and kind of the high density, we're having to change our basis of design to, harden the mechanical plant, which you normally didn't do. So all of a sudden your cost per megawatt goes up. So you put it all together, the prices are going up, period. I mean, they've already doubled in the last 3 years. They're going to keep going up because of that. And on the community side, I think it really is partnering with the community. And before you do new site acquisition, you have to have a strategy around that. And I think the right strategy, we're building a 192 megawatt data center campus in Culpeper, Virginia. We picked Culpeper because the town of Culpeper was proactive. They said they wanted data centers, but they only wanted them in a certain area. Yep. So they were going to create this Culpeper technology zone, and data center operators are welcome to be there and we'll help you there. So I think it's that type of collaborative approach that's going to be necessary. And probably like yourself, we're avoiding anything that's even close to residential because it's becoming a bit of a third rail type of thing, and people are obviously blaming data centers for the rise in electrical prices, even though there's a lot of other factors there, like the modernization of the grid, which costs hundreds of billions of dollars. So I think it's going to be a rocky road there, and again, we're good in a way. Something that will, again, prevent too much capacity from coming to market too quickly and kind of causing, imbalance.
Yeah. No, and I'd say, same thing for us. I think just having deep engagement and also just educating folks around the benefits of that, obviously job creation, tax value creation,
taxes,
relatively low utilization of resources and being able to support and again, investing back into the community, right? Again, I know we both feel very passionately about that. It's
correct.
When we go into a market, we're not going to up and leave. We're building 30, 50-year assets there. We're building campuses that are going to be longer than that, and we're in it for the long haul. And I think the most important point is develop where there's interest and excitement around that, rather than trying to push your way into areas that might just be optimized for a short gain, right? And I think that's an important message for everybody around this. When I think about the winners for this, if the communities that we're operating in aren't also participating in this in some meaningful way as part of the win, what have we done, right? What value are we ultimately creating for everybody around us?
Yep.
I guess, Andrej, throw it over to you, just as you think about what are the additional challenges that we're not looking around corners, or what's the most interesting set of questions that a client's hey, that was not what I was expecting to have as a dialogue around. Anything jump off the page for you?
I think that the element is how the whole PTC has changed, I would say, even from last year to this year. Because last year, a lot of the people were thinking about, I have a plan, I have a vision, I have an idea. This year, a lot of we need to get a lot of the data centers also up and running. We need to get 2026 certain things already operational, and we need to start demonstrating that this is delivering value. And I think those will be the key questions. We see a lot of neoclouds starting to open up, but will the neoclouds often they are starting to ask, okay, I need to build it. Will I have a fiber there? Will I have Will I be able to operate? I think the ability to realization is the key question which is starting to happen. Like, can I really deliver the data center? Can I get my anchor tenants on it? Is it safe? Can I also commercialize it? Will I make the sufficient money on it? What do I do with the chips? Those are the questions which are very operational nature, and I think that's the themes that we see from the infrastructure side. From the customer side, it is how can I really demonstrate value? How can I make ROI? And currently, a lot of the ROI is really about headcount reduction. Let's be clear. We need to demonstrate also other value creation. And that's to the point. We need to create also value with the revenue side, because if it's that, then it creates exactly this kind of like what you said, an externality and view, which is not the right way.
Yeah.
I got to jump on this really quick. Sorry. But
go for it.
No,
when
please.
people are looking at us and saying, help us figure out how we can save money, cut workforce, like you're not getting it. That's not where this is. It's new value creation. We're on the edge of actually starting to like solve all math problems known to humanity. We're about to go and like break all physics, massive, the questions of the universe. We're now solving. What can we do to do new, not save 20% on headcount?
Yeah. No, that's a great, I mean, Bristol Myers Squibb is a great customer of ours, and I mean, drug discovery, first and foremost, I think, cancer is within reach of like being solvable, and again, a lot of this is through, I mean, I think fusion will actually maybe exist in, if not our lifetime, certainly our children's for the first time in
our
reality.
Lifetime.
And again,
absolutely.
Again, because of AI and the technology advances there, so amen to all of that. When you think about, and I'll go over to you, Jeff, now, like when you think about the landscape and areas throughout this stack, are there ones where you've been deliberately avoiding, saying like, all right, we want this part of the network, but like some of this, like we're not really interested in, we'll let other people play in that space. Like, how do you think about which segments you really want to attack inside there?
Yeah, so I grew up in the school of rational ROI. So it's all about, setting your strategy and living into it. And we carefully get into our where to play, how to win. And obviously, I just described a couple minutes ago the wireless use case that we have. So I think everybody can wrap their heads around that. So that's distributed metro networks. We have not really gone to scale with our long haul potential. We have engaged in some opportunistic investments with some of the hyperscalers out there. We've announced those in the third and fourth quarter of last year, but that's something we're not going to build on spec. We vividly remember the .com bubble, and we want to make sure that we're investing where it really meets our core business. And when you think about Verizon, I mean, we are a wireless company first, a wireline and a business company second, and that's really how we set our priorities, but we cannot be all things to everybody. We are dipping our toe in the water, though, because we have space and power, but it's obviously not in the scale as Raul and some of our friends here in the Equinix in the different data center spaces. But for where latency is required to be close to the edge for an enterprise use case, how can we partner with some folks for GPU as a service close to their prem? We think there's going to be a lot more of that in the future, but we're dipping our toe in the water there right now.
Awesome. Raul, how about you?
Yeah, no, I think for us, it's really a geographic question, right? So as obviously over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of new geographies that traditionally weren't data center geographies. Some of them are, new core markets, right? Atlanta, right? You remember Atlanta was always kind of a secondary market, and now in the last couple of years, it's becoming a legitimate, core market. So I see that market growing significantly. So we've limited our data center development to what we consider, I like to call them permanent core long-term markets. Obviously, there's folks building in places where there's power, right? In North Dakota and Wyoming and West Texas, and certainly those are legitimate use cases. But it's just something that, for our perspective, we're going to stay kind of in our swim lane around geography, and it's harder because it's core markets, it's more dense. But ultimately, we think data centers is real estate, right? And it's location. So we'd rather focus on the prime locations, even if they're harder to do and takes us longer. And maybe we can't bring as much inventory to market as if we went somewhere else, but that's the risk reward we're comfortable with.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we share that perspective. I guess 77 metros now in 37 countries, but it is to us, it's where does the traffic actually matter? Where are the end users there? And I think like, at the end state, will we be more markets? Probably still less than 100 for a while though. And I think that concept of like the real estate still matters, right? Yeah. Ultimately, if you want to think about the durability of the revenue and the asset and like, hey, we have to be able to see through just the 3 or 5 year cycle and think about this like 20, 30 year cycle, then, that risk adjusted bet is better. And I think you guys share the perspective. We'd rather be late and catch up than be early and then have a white elephant kind of sitting around, right?
But John, actually you said, all of you said one interesting point in a different ways. And I would say that's a topic to many of the investors and people who are here. If none of you guys are going to certain locations, and what are the guys who have often never been in the industry seeing in that location? Is it potentially, as you said, the white elephant that is there that will, or is it the kind of like the money pot, or everyone has missed it?
Well, I think it's a great question.
And that's kind of like time will tell.
Look, I think at the end of the day, there's tons of opportunity, right? And I think there's different business, and we always say this all the time, it's like there's great business there, it's just not our business, right? And it's not our risk appetite around some of those areas.
Exactly.
And I think, again, this is not to poo-poo anybody around that, but there is definitely gonna be some riskier stuff out there, and it's not even about this first customer, right? Because again, I think these customers are great credit tenancy, great like development, it's okay, 20 years in, what are you going to do with the asset, especially when it's that far out, and what are you going to do on kind of the repurposing of that? So, all right, one last, maybe 2 minutes, last thoughts. Start with you, Scott.
Inferencing has not even begun. Baseball metaphor, we're not in the top of the first inning. We're looking for parking.
That's great. Next, Andrej.
I think I will pick up on the inferencing. Now we need to deliver, and we are building at this moment a lot of training. We need to switch to inferencing, and we need to also start using it. I think that will be the next frontier, and I think the connectivity and the location matter.
Yeah. Jeff?
So all the network operators talk about partnership across the wholesale ecosystem all the time, and going back to our thesis before, we can't be all things to everybody. So we continue to work with many of the folks here at PTC for partnership opportunities, see how we interconnect networks. But the future is going to be determined around interoperability. So we continue to invest in also the AIs that are the APIs that have to connect us east to west for when we transact with each other, but also developing capabilities down into the network to really get QoS on demand to be able to realize all the promises being made by AI.
Oh, great. Well?
Yeah, I would just say this is a marathon, not a race. And I think that type of approach long-term will bear the best fruit, and might miss a bunch of opportunities in the short run, but I think it's a more logical route in the future.
Love it. And I guess from my perspective, I would just say, I think the opportunity, like just from a total value creation for the population is so huge. It's on us as an industry as a whole to make sure we take it, do that well. But I think it's also let's be smart about it this time around. Again, from just an economic portion, we will not be able to solve this as a collective if we're all trying to win all of it. And so find the right segments there, partner with each other, think about where you want to play, where there's the right set of opportunities, and make sure there probably needs to be more transparency in some of the dialogue than there ever has, because again, the risk tolerances and the ability to handle that and the community engagement necessary, public policy, sovereign, a lot of folks internationally, there's so much more complexity than it probably was when we were just trying to figure out how to power mobile video playing, that this is going to be a tougher road. So just make sure that we're all having great conversations with each other at this show and all throughout the year. So with that, thank my incredible panel for the discussion today, and have a great rest of your show.